A camera lens like this 28-70 f2 G Master or an f1.8 or an f1.4 prime lens is great, but you don't always want to use those lenses at their lowest aperture. Take a look at this photo. If we consider the rules and the elements of composition, being contrast, line, texture, shape, and of course, lighting and the orientation and the grids and the rule of all of that stuff. One of the elements that is important here is depth, because if I had shot this photo at the lowest aperture on this lens of f2, what would have happened is I wouldn't have been able to get both the silhouette of the trees and the background looking sharp. If I had focused on the background, the edge of the trees would have been a little bit blurry, or vice versa. Now in this case, what's important isn't how shallow the depth is, but how expanded that depth of field is. So in this case, the trees were a little bit farther away from me and the mountains were really far away from me. So shooting at f5 allowed me to maintain that sharp edge of the trees. Now, so I'm not actually using shallow depth, I'm expanding the depth and relying on other elements like contrast, because what you can see is this unedited photo, I haven't edited this at all, is that I'm relying on the fact that the trees are in shadow and are silhouetted and the background is nice and bright and you get that early morning lighting. Now, if I had relied on texture, for example, if I boost the shadows in this photo, you can see that what starts to happen is the texture of the trees and the leaves starts to conflict with some of the texture of the rock in the background. So if I had been shooting this photo at a different point in the day where there maybe was more lighting hitting the trees and the trees were bright, I might have actually wanted to lower my aperture to introduce that shallower depth of field and either blurt out the mountains or blurt out the trees to create that depth. So when you're creating your composition, think about the elements that are important and the ones that aren't, because you don't need to use them all. You don't always need to shoot at that lowest aperture. Sometimes raising your aperture, closing down that opening inside your camera can actually produce you a completely unique, different type of image.